Have you ever wanted to try growing watermelons in the UK? This is something that I did last year and I didn't use a greenhouse. I love watermelons, I love eating them, and I really wanted to try one fresh off the vine. It does feel weird saying watermelons in the UK. They're quite a tropical fruit. You wouldn't expect to see them growing here. We have such cool summers sometimes, they're very short, and you really, when those ripening phases are happening in the autumn, we don't tend to have enough heat. In today's video, I'm going to talk you through how I grew a large watermelon in my garden without using a greenhouse. Last summer in the UK was quite cool, and so we faced a lot of challenges. And I think that because I've managed to grow a watermelon in that year, this can act as a blueprint to help you in your garden grow watermelons too. Cast your minds back to March and I decided to jump in and buy a packet of watermelon seeds. I opted for Sugar Baby, and it's a hilarious name, but Sugar Baby is a slightly more compact watermelon. It doesn't grow really big like those ones that you'll see in the supermarket. It tends to be a little bit smaller, and I was thinking that maybe I'd get one or two off of this plant and that I'd be able to get them through before the end of the summer. We had a really challenging spring and I moved into my new flat and the heating situation was a little bit weird. So a lot of my seedlings seemed to grow quite slowly and I really was upset. I genuinely didn't think I'd get any seedlings to come through to actually planting outside. However, as April and May arrived, the seedlings started ramping up. I kept my watermelon seedlings on a heat mat, and I would recommend that for any type of tropical plant or slightly less hardy plant that you're growing. Any greenhouse crops need to go on a heat mat in your house to keep that temperature at about 30 degrees for them. When it came to planting the watermelon up, I decided to plant it outside. This is because I have way more growing space outside than I do inside the polytunnel, and I always reserve this space for tomatoes, peppers, and maybe a couple of other melons or cucumbers. I find they grow a lot better in this space. The watermelon needed more growing space outside. If you haven't done so already, I'd love to have you along for my growing journey. Why not hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell to see my videos when they drop. Things I would recommend for planting a watermelon outside. I talk a lot about hotbeds and hot composting on this channel, and I would recommend you try and make a hotbed or a hot compost heap in about March. You want to do it a couple of months before you plant into this. You make them about 3 foot, but you can make them a little bit smaller, and you want to mix in manure, wood chip and greens. I've made a video about how you can hot compost up here, which you can check out. The reason behind doing this is that you can heat the soil that you put on top of the hotbed and just keep it nice and warm. Those roots then have a lovely warm growing space to spread into, and they can really get going. This is exactly what I did, and my hotbed at this point was about 25 to 30 degrees on the surface. We're talking late May, early June, so obviously the ground outside was actually a little bit cooler than that. Really took a long time to get going, and some of my plants were really lagging behind last year. However, the watermelon had a warmer growing space to grow into. The other thing I did was I really fed my soil well. The hotbed has manure in it, so therefore plants can access all those nutrients. If you're not going to do this and you want to use just a general open space, then I'd recommend you get some aged manure or really rich compost and you mix in something like backed guano. Backed guano is very rich in N, P and K, that's nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, and that will really help the plants to thrive. You can also grow them on a just general compost heap because this will have a little bit more heat to it. I would recommend that you add a 10-inch layer of compost to start it with. This is because the roots won't like going into the composting material straight away. It will start burning them. They really love the nutrients that's coming out of the compost, and they also absolutely love the heat. So if you can heat them up this way, or you can just give them lots of food, then they'll do really well. Let's talk about how I kept them warm on the top. Over the top of my watermelon, I added a sheet of polycarbonate. This was just spare going, or you could get some plastic as well, or glass to put over the top. You could even build a little cold frame or buy one to put over the top of the watermelon. This is okay because you can lift this off when it starts getting really big, but it's just for those first couple of months. We really want to focus on getting that plant to a decent size in the first couple of months, because at least then it will have the energy to produce fruits when you get to about July or August. Do watch out for birds and other creatures. Maybe cover it over with some netting or some chicken wire, or add a plastic sheet over the top just to stop anything from coming in that way. As the watermelon grew, it didn't have a lot of light and sun. It didn't really have that much heat. The bed itself was heating it up from the bottom, and any sunlight that did come through helped to just warm the air a little bit underneath it. I did measure the heat a little bit, and it wasn't too much off, about 30 degrees over the time. That's a lot warmer than it was outside. On some of the June and July days, the temperature dropped to about 15-16 degrees out here. So it was a real challenge growing them. Let's talk about the fun bit, which is pollinating your flowers. With a solo squash or a solo watermelon, you really need to make sure that you get a little paintbrush and you just dab the ends of the flowers. This is going to help spread the pollen amongst the flowers. This is also true if you're growing them in a sheltered space, because bees and other pollinators aren't necessarily going to get in there and pollinate those fruits. Watching the watermelon growing was fascinating. Seeing it go from a little bulb like that to suddenly swelling every day. Oh, it filled me with so much joy just watching the different stages. It got bigger and bigger and bigger, which leads us on to harvesting the watermelon. How did I know when it was right? Watermelons are a little bit different to melons because they don't really smell around the stem. Cantaloupe melons will smell, and you'll really get they almost leak out of the tops when they're ready. They're very juicy, you can smell that real fragrance. Watermelons don't really have that. What they do instead is, where they've been sitting, you need to roll them over gently, not ripping the stem, and look underneath. Give it a tap. It's supposed to be quite hollow. The patch where the watermelon has been resting will either be green or yellow. If it's got a yellowish tinge to it, it's ready to harvest. You can also do the thumbnail trick, which is where you push in your thumbnail into the skin lightly, and if it doesn't come back with a mark, then it's ready to harvest. It's firmed up enough that it's ready. And on to the taste test. How did my watermelon taste? Oh, goodness me, it was amazing. It was so juicy. I remember eating it and just all the juice coming out all over the plate and everywhere. It was such a momentous occasion. I shared a little bit with my neighbour because I was so excited to share it out. I felt like I'd really accomplished something, because you just don't really see watermelons out in the UK. The flavour was so much fresher than anything you've tried in the supermarket. I know it's a cliche to say this, but it really did taste very fresh and very different to anything that you've tried. What was great as well was eating it in the sunshine. It just felt like I was transported to somewhere in the Mediterranean or somewhere really warm. If you're enjoying this video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button down below. It'll help to send this video out to more people who are looking to grow watermelons in their allotment this year, and hopefully I can inspire and encourage others. Thank you so much. Will I be growing watermelons again next year? Absolutely 100%. I want to increase the amount of watermelons that I try next year. And this is what I mean about changing the way I'm going to grow food on my allotment. I want to invest a little bit more time in some of these tropical crops because I know that I can do it, and I want to challenge myself to try and increase the amount of crops that I grow. Using hot composting and hotbeds, all I really need to do is get more of the structures built so I can fill them with wood chip, greens and manure and grow these plants more successfully. If you're growing watermelons in your allotment this year, then I hope that I've given you some inspiration and some tips to take away. It really is about making hot compost or hotbeds so that you have that soil nice and warm, and just adding a sheet of plastic or glass over the top, or making a little mini greenhouse. You can buy those little plastic greenhouses from other garden centres that you can put on top. Just give it a little bit more heat and you will see a watermelon thriving. Let me know in the comments if you'll be trying growing watermelons, or if you've tried growing melons in the past. I'd love to hear your experiences. If you'd like to check out any more of my videos, you can find them over here. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!